The scene amidst which Clayton told his last story comes back very vividly to my mind. There he sat, for the greater part of the time, in a corner of the settle by the spacious open fire, and Sanderson sat beside him. There was Evans, and that marvel among actors, Wish. We had all come down to the Mermaid Club that Saturday morning, except Clayton, who had slept there overnight. We had dined, and we were in that mood of tranquil kindliness when men will suffer a story. "I say," Clayton remarked, "you know I was alone here last night. Well, I caught a ghost." "Caught a ghost, did you?" said Sanderson. "Where is it?" Clayton asked him to shut the door. "We don't want to upset our very excellent service with any rumours of ghosts in the place. There's too much shadow and oak panelling to trifle with that. And this, you know, wasn't a regular ghost. I don't think it will come again, ever." "You mean to say you didn't keep it?" said Sanderson. "I hadn't the heart to," said Clayton. "The fact is, it really was a ghost." "You talked to it?" asked Wish. "For the space, probably, of an hour. The poor devil was in trouble. Poor fellow. I never realised, and I took an advantage. Even at the first glance he struck me as weak. I came upon him, you know, in the long passage. His back was towards me, so I saw him first. Right off I knew him for a ghost. He was transparent and whitish. And not only his physique, but his attitude struck me as being weak. He looked, you know, as though he didn't know in the slightest whatever he meant to do." "What sort of physique?" said Sanderson. "Lean. Shoulders bad, narrower than the hips. Ready-made short jacket, trousers baggy and a little frayed at the heels. I came very quietly up the staircase. I was in my slippers, you see, and I saw him. I wasn't a bit afraid. I was surprised and interested. I suppose I wasn't on the landing a moment before he found out I was there. He turned on me sharply, and I saw the face of an immature young man. A weak nose, a scrubby little moustache, a feeble chin. He spread his hands in approved ghost fashion and came towards me, and as he did so, he emitted a faint, drawn-out boo. But it wasn't a bit dreadful. I'd had a bottle of champagne, and being all alone, perhaps 2 or 3, perhaps even 4 or 5 whiskies, so I was no more frightened than if I'd been assailed by a frog. "Boo," I said, "nonsense. You don't belong to this place. What are you doing here? Are you a member?" And just to show I didn't care a pin for him, I stepped through a corner of him. "Are you a member?" I repeated, looking at him sideways. His bearing became crestfallen. "No," he said. "I'm not a member. I'm a ghost." "Well, that doesn't give you the run of the Mermaid Club," I said. "Is there anyone you want to see or anything of that sort? What are you doing here?" There he stood, abashed and awkward, the ghost of a weak, silly, aimless young man. "I'm haunting," he said. "Well, that may be," I said, "but you haven't any business to haunt here. This is a respectable private club. You haven't any claim on the place, have you? Weren't murdered here or anything of that sort?" "None, sir. But I thought, as it was old and oak-panelled—" "That's no excuse. If I were you, I wouldn't wait for cockcrow. I'd vanish right away." He looked embarrassed. "The fact is, sir, that somehow I can't." "You can't?" "No, sir. There's something I've forgotten. I'm flurried. I've never come haunting before, and it seems to put me out. There's some little thing has slipped my memory, and I can't get back." That, you know, rather bowled me over. Well, in a little while, we were deep in a long and serious talk, and presently I began to realise just a little what a weird business it was that I was in. There he was, telling me all about this wretched little life of his that had recently ended on earth. There he was, purposeless in life and purposeless out of it. He had been too sensitive, too nervous. Nobody had ever valued him properly or understood him, he said. He had never had a success. "It's like that with some people," he said. Wherever he was now, he seemed to have fallen in with a set of kindred spirits, ghosts of weak Cockney young men who seemed to think haunting a tremendous adventure, and most of them funked it all the time. But what gave a sort of point to him, you know, was the fact that he did seem within limits to have found himself out. The mess he had made of haunting had depressed him terribly. He had been told it would be a lark. He had come expecting it to be a lark. And here it was, nothing but another failure added to his record. If he had had sympathy, perhaps... He paused at that and stood regarding me. He remarked that, strange as it might seem to me, nobody, not anyone ever, had given him the amount of sympathy I was doing now. I got up briskly. "Don't you brood on these things too much," I said. "The thing you've got to do is to get out of this. You pull yourself together and try." Try he did, with a complicated series of gestures and passes with the hands. "Did you," said Sanderson slowly, "observe the passes?" "Yes," said Clayton. "It was tremendously queer. Suddenly the ghost sat down on a little chair at the foot of the bed and began to sob and sob. 'You pull yourself together,' I said to him again, 'and try.' And in order to encourage him, I began to try as well." "What?" said Sanderson. "The passes?" "Yes, the passes." "This is interesting," said Sanderson, with his finger in his pipe bowl. "And at last he did it?" "At last he did it, rather suddenly. He got up abruptly and asked me to go through the whole performance slowly so that he might see. 'I believe,' he said, 'if I could see, I should spot what was wrong at once.' And he did. 'I know,' he repeated, and then he said peevishly, 'I can't do it if you look at me, I really can't. It's been that partly all along. I'm such a nervous fellow that you put me out.' 'All right,' I said, 'I won't look at you,' and turned towards the mirror by the bed. He started off very fast. I tried to follow him by looking in the looking-glass. Round went his arms and hands, so and so and so. And then, with a rush, he came to the last gesture of all. You stand erect and open out your arms, and so, don't you know, he stood. And then he didn't. He wasn't. I was alone with the flaring candles. Clayton regarded his cigar ash for a moment. "That's all that happened," he said. We wanted to scoff, but there was something perhaps in Clayton's voice and manner that hampered our desire. "And about these passes," said Sanderson. "I believe I could do them now, and that's what I'm going to do." Clayton stood up and faced me. His eyes were on the opposite wall, with an intent expression. Then he raised his two hands slowly to the level of his eyes and began. Now Sanderson is a Freemason, and he followed Clayton's motions with a singular interest in his reddish eye. "That's not bad," he said when it was done. "But there's one little detail left out." "I know," said Clayton. "It's this." And he did a queer little twist and writhing and thrust of the hands. Sanderson nodded. "Yes." "That was what he couldn't get right," said Clayton. "But how did you know?" "They happen to be a series of gestures connected with a certain branch of esoteric masonry," said Sanderson. "I don't see I can do any harm in telling you the proper twist." And very rapidly he gesticulated with his hands. "Ah, now," said Clayton, "I can do the whole thing right." He smiled at us. But I think there was just a little hesitation in his smile. "If I begin," he said. "You know, I'd rather you didn't," said Wish, stretching out his legs. He said that for Clayton to go through gestures was like mocking a serious matter. "But you don't believe," I said. "I do. More than half, anyhow, I do," said Wish. "It's all right," said Evans. "Matter is indestructible. You don't think any jiggery-pokery of this sort is going to snatch Clayton into the world of shades? Not it. Wish stood up and put his arms on Clayton's shoulders. You've made me believe in the story somehow, and I don't want to see the thing done. Goodness, said I, here's Wish frightened. I am, he said. I believe that if he goes through these motions right, he'll go. Clayton, you're a fool. Clayton smiled at him. Wish, he said, is right, and all you others are wrong. I shall go. I'm certain, and so will you be. I decline to argue further. Let the thing be tried. And he raised his hands once more. By that time, you know, we were all in a state of tension, largely because of the behaviour of Wish. We sat, all of us, with our eyes on Clayton. And there, with a gravity that was imperturbably serene, he bowed and swayed and waved his hands and arms before us. The last gesture, I have said, was to swing the arms out wide open, with his face held up. And when at last he swung out to this closing gesture, I ceased even to breathe. It was ridiculous, of course, but you know that ghost story feeling. It was after dinner, in a queer, old, shadowy house. Would he, after all? There he stood, for one stupendous moment, with his arms open and his upturned face assured and bright in the glare of the hanging lamp. Then came from all of us something that was half a sigh of relief and half a reassuring no. For visibly he wasn't going. It was all nonsense. He had told an idle story and carried it almost to conviction, that was all. And then, in that moment, the face of Clayton changed. It changed as a lit house changes when its lights are suddenly extinguished. His eyes were suddenly eyes that were fixed. His smile was frozen on his lips. He stood there, very gently swaying. Then his knees seemed to give, and he fell forward, and Evans caught him in his arms. It stunned us all. We believed it, yet could not believe it. All I certainly know is that in the very moment, in the very instant of concluding those passes, he changed and staggered and fell down before us, dead.
The Inexperienced Ghost by H.G. Wells was read by David McAlister, abridged by Madge Hart and produced by Pat McLaughlin. And the final short story of the week from Wells is tomorrow at the same time. Now, next week on 4 Extra, you can hear a reading of Deborah Levy's haunting novel, Swimming Home. A famous British poet is on holiday with family and friends on the French Riviera, but when a chaotic, beautiful young woman arrives unexpectedly at their villa, their holiday and their relationships are turned